Hello and welcome to Reaching for the Moon, presented by Everglades Moon Local Council, Florida chapter of Covenant of the Goddess. COG supports individual works by its covens, members, and local councils. It's a vibrant network of a myriad of Wiccan and witchy resources, religious support, friendships, service opportunities, and more. To find out more, visit our website, emlc.net, our Facebook page, facebook.com/EvergladesMoon, or Twitter, @EMLCTweets.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 41 of Reaching for the Moon podcast. And this is our Ostara 2018 episode. And I'm really excited again. I'm always excited. I always say that. Every podcast I say I'm excited. But you know what? It's because I am. I love doing the podcast. I love bringing the different segments to you. I love picking out the music. That's just a fun thing. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. This Sabbat, we bring you The Beloved Dead again for Ostara with Rayna Templebee. And she tells us about working with our ancestor altar at this time of the spring. After that, we have Pandie's Pagan Projects, and she's continuing her miniature altar series with making wands. After that, we're going to have a fun segment with Lord Riekin, Going Batty, and I'm going to let you figure out what that one is all by yourself. And of course, we'll have music. This podcast, we're going to feature the music of Emerald Rose, so all three songs will be all from Emerald Rose, and you can learn about them and buy their music at www.emeraldrose.com. The first song that we're going to hear from Emerald Rose is Hills of America. It is one of my favorites. If your family was like my family and emigrated here from another land, I think you'll find that this song touches your heart. So we'll start with that, and I hope you enjoy.
Look away to the hills of America, west of the sunset, we're destined to roam. Look away to the hills of America, soon we will call them the sweet hills of home. Did I live in the lands of my fathers, working the soil that was passed down to me. The famine and hardship could never defeat us. The crown took our land and our right to be free. Look away to the hills of America, west of the sunset, we're destined to roam. Look away to the hills of America, soon we will call them the sweet hills of home. I cannot look back as they weigh up the anchor, the sorrowing parting, but hope on the wind. In the eyes of my wife and the eyes of our people, our courage rekindled, our journey begins. Look away to the hills of America, west of the sunset, we're destined to roam. Look away to the hills of America, soon we will call them the sweet hills of home. They say there's a land to the west of the sunset, where hills are like emeralds, streams run with gold, where a man nation. No child cries in hunger or dies from the cold. Look away to the hills of America. West of the sunset, we're destined to roam. Look away to the hills of America. Soon we will call them the sweet hills of home. Look away to the hills of America. West of the sunset, we're destined to roam. Look away to the hills of America. Soon we will call them the sweet hills of home.
Those who have died have never left. The dead have a pact with the living. Is the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters?
Hello everyone, this is Rayna Templebee with a new episode of the Beloved Dead podcast for Ostara. Beloved Dead took a break for Imbolc, and we're really happy to be back and sharing ancestral magic with you again here at the EMLC podcast. So, Ostara, we're coming into the season of the spring equinox, when day and night are equal, when the earth is, in the northern hemisphere at least, awakening to the warmth of the sun as we turn back towards the sun. And especially where I live, we are at the height of the dry season, getting ready for the rains. We're welcoming the rains here sometime in the spring. So there's a lot of activity in the earth. It's still a little bit hidden under the ground, but the earth is awakening. I think we all feel that at Ostara very much. So sometimes people think that this is a challenging time to do ancestral work. At Samhain, the dead are very close to us, and the beloved dead make their wishes known, and the whole culture around us is talking about ghosts and spirits, and it's relatively easy to tune into ancestors. But what do you do in the springtime when everything's about the bunnies and the flowers and the candy? Well, ancestral work is a year-round practice for those of us who are really dedicated to the beloved dead, and I'm going to share with you some ways to think about how to work with ancestors even during this time of spring and new life and new growth and all kinds of externally focused things as opposed to internally focused. So one of the things to keep in mind is that as you see the earth returning and new things growing, and maybe you're thinking about your garden or you're watching the flowers on the trees as they bloom, all growth comes from what has been before. And so this is a fundamental principle of ancestral work, and one of the reasons we do ancestral work is to honor what has come before, so that we give that not just respect, but we actually try and understand the mysteries of what has gone before. And then that helps us to be the best prepared we can be for the new growth that we're asking. So like I've mentioned in earlier podcasts, your magic will deepen if you are connecting to the past when you look to the future. So at this time of year, with this big energy of new growth, ancestral work is really at the heart of that. It's at the root. It's what's feeding the roots of the plants and the earth right now. It's what's providing the experiential nutrition, you might say, the accumulated observations and experiences and karma of all the entities that have come before. And from there, we are able to enter into new growth, into new adventures. And that's one of the things that's most exciting about doing ancestral work at this time of the year. Now, related to this is a question that often comes up about ancestral work and the concept of reincarnation. So some people wonder, how can pagans, modern neo-pagans, believe simultaneously in honoring their ancestors, i.e. the spirits of those who have gone before us and passed over, and reincarnation? i.e. believing that our souls are reborn into new form. Well, this is a very important question, and one that many different religious institutions have struggled with and have spent a lot of time pondering. And I urge you to give this some reflection, but here's a relatively simple way that you can help think about this and make sense of it. In witchcraft, we believe that we will be reborn with those we have known before, and often we actively encourage that when we're trying to conceive a child, which is something I'm going to talk about in the next podcast. But we believe that we're going to be reborn, and we often feel like when we meet people in our covens and our witchcraft lives that we have known them before, and that is because there is a pattern, an energetic pattern that we gravitate to when we reincarnate. And so one way to think about this is that each of us are individual personalities incarnated in this lifetime in order to have a very specific set of experiences. However, we are also part of a broader, larger stream of souls, or soul stream, as my teacher Orion Foxwood calls it, which are more like extended families of people who share a similar purpose for incarnation, who share many different experiences as they incarnate in individual personal lives, but who are working a particular kind of thread of the universe together. And that's why we can incarnate in this lifetime, but feel like we have known people from previous lifetimes, because we're probably part of the same soul stream. It's also why we can honor the particular ancestor, the grandmother, the aunt who has passed over, but also simultaneously know that her spirit has rejoined the soul stream and is resting in the arms of the goddess before it chooses to incarnate again on the earth. So I hope that very brief explanation helps a little bit with this particular question of reincarnation and ancestral work. Another important thing to think about in terms of working with ancestors at the spring equinox is that a lot of our human ancestors on this earth found the equinoxes to be very important days to mark with large architecture. So as an archaeologist, I get to spend a lot of time thinking about this, and there are temples all over the world that are dedicated to commemorating astronomical events like the solstices and the equinoxes. And the equinoxes are particularly significant and relatively easy to mark, because one only has to observe the passage, the length of days for about a year before you're able to mark and determine which days and nights have the equal length, which is the definition of the equinox. So just to suggest to you that one of the ways we can think about ancestral work is to take a moment to tune in to these big monuments that were built by our ancestors, our human ancestors, right? We may not be talking about our own particular family in this case, but at this point I want you to start thinking about a broader sense of ancestral connection. And so, for example, the main temple at Angkor Wat, which is one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world, it's in Cambodia. Very, very beautiful set of temples that were built around reflecting lakes in the 10th, 11th, and 12th centuries. The primary temple of Angkor Wat faces the east, and there's a road that leads to it. So if you're standing in that temple on sunrise at spring equinox, you will see the sun rise along that road, and the light will shine directly into the temple. It's tremendously beautiful. I'm sure I haven't seen it myself, but you can imagine that when our ancestors stood in that doorway, they felt aligned with the universe. They felt not only grounded and centered, but perfectly in sync with the movements of the planets and the stars. There's another example that I have been able to witness, which is a temple called El Castillo, or the castle at Chichen Itza, which is in Yucatan, Mexico. And this is a four-sided temple that has stairways on all four sides. And on the two main sides, there are these sculptures that look like serpents. And at the base of the stairway on the ground, there's a big serpent's head. And the building is designed exactly to align that on the sunset, on spring equinox and fall equinox, light is cast across the edges of this four-sided temple onto the stairwell, and it makes a series of diamond shapes that make it look like the snake is descending the stairway. It's amazing. So the snake is moving down from the heavens at the summit of the temple down to the base of the ground to join the people. And that was a primary deity for the Maya, this particular snake. So it was an ancestral vision that was being summoned on equinox. How cool is that, right? And then just one more example is the Sphinx in Egypt. Everybody's familiar with the Sphinx, but not everybody knows that the Sphinx faces directly east. And so again, because on equinox the sun is rising directly in the east, not south or north of the east like it will the rest of the year. It's rising directly in the east. So on spring equinox, when the Sphinx was built, now there's been a little bit of change over time, since it's many thousands of years old, the sun rose immediately in front of the face of the Sphinx, cast its light on that monument. How much of a blessing could that be, right? That's huge. Okay, now I don't want to end before giving you some new altar work, because that's one of the most important ways to keep this current alive in your daily work. So here's a couple of suggestions for altar work for Ostara. If you have dedicated a space for an ancestral altar in your home, then this would be a great time of the year to change out the altar cloth. I know I asked you before to use something white and or black. I think white is always best to start, but this would be a great time to choose something that's very much in keeping with the season, something like a pastel color, a light color. Let's stick still with light colors for now, because that's very favorable to the energy of ancestors. But a pale yellow or a pale blue would be perfect, right? So that's a wonderful new practice you can try. And then I would like you to, I suggest that you consider honoring the flowers that were the favorites of your grandmothers, right? So we all have grandmothers, and even our crankiest of grandmothers, our postmenopausal, no hormone replacement therapy grandmothers, had favorite flowers. Everybody has a favorite flower, right? And so I want you to take some time to remember what their favorite flowers were. Maybe they grew them in their garden, or maybe they had them on the table in their homes. People used to keep flowers in the home a lot more than they do now. And usually they were flowers that they had grown, or flowers from outside, rather than purchased flowers. And there's an energy in that. You can tell when you do it, when you keep this practice. If they're flowers you've raised yourself in your yard, they have a different energy than flowers that you buy at the shop. However, all of these practices are good. So if you don't have a yard, or you don't have flowers growing in your yard, please do purchase some flowers at this time of year. Okay, so we're thinking about what was meaningful to them, and why is this a good ancestral practice? Well, it's very sweet, first of all. It brings you into alignment with their spirits. But more than that, when someone chooses a favorite flower, it reflects a vibrational sympathy between them. So my favorite flower and myself, we share an energy. The reason it's my favorite is because I love the energy of that flower. It speaks to me, or the color speaks to me, or something about it. We just really vibrate in harmony. And so when you honor the flower that was the favorite of your grandmother's, you are touching that same vibration. And bringing yourself in contact with it helps you bring yourself in alignment with it. And that then gives you access to that ancestor in a new way than you might have had before. So that's our new altar work. Change your altar cloth, honor your grandmother's flowers. Put them on your altar, in your home, anywhere is fine. All right? Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back at Beltane.
Those who have died have never left, but they have a pact with the living. Is the ancestors' breath in the voice of the waters?
everyone. This is Pandie, and it's time for another one of Pandie's Pagan Projects. I do apologize for the degree of raspiness in my voice. I am one of the fortunate few who is getting over the flu. We're going to continue working on our travel altars, though, flu or not. Last time, we made pentacles and discussed some things to keep in mind when you start to work on your altar. This month, we'll be making wands. For your travel altar, you can use whatever sort of wand you'd like. Some people use small branches or twigs from trees close to home. Others use crystals. Some folks don't use wands at all. All of these and anything else you can think up are completely fine. In my tradition, we do use wands, and today we'll be making one out of polymer clay. Our only real supply that we need for this particular project is our polymer clay. You can use some that you might have left over for making your pentacle, or if you want, you can use a different color entirely. In addition, you can add anything you want to your wand as well, from glitter to paint, ribbons, or small crystal points. You're only limited by the imagination of what you'd like your wand to look like and the size of the wand. If you're going to be using a crystal point or some other decoration that will stick to the wand, I would recommend not attaching it until the wand is baked. Some items may shatter in the oven. You can press the crystal or other decoration into the wand ahead of baking it, then use an adhesive of your choice to mount them to your wand into the impression that you made. The way you make your wand is entirely up to you. Roll out a small snake, give it nifty bends, roll out a smaller snake to wind around your wand to give it more texture. Anything goes. You can even mix 2 or more colors together and get some lovely colored swirls through your wand. If you want to add a little more energy to your wand, you can start with a small wooden core. This would bring the energy of the wood into your wand. Just be careful when you're baking so that the wood does not come to a temperature that will cause it to catch fire. You may want to use air dry clay if you're going to use a wooden core. Alternatively, you can mix a little bit of sawdust in as you need the clay to infuse it with that wood's energy. If you've got an oil of that wood, you can mix it in or anoint your wand once you're done. Another thing you can do if you have a tree of that type nearby is to place your crafted wand in its branches or even bury it in the roots. Ask the tree to lend its energies to your crafted wand so that you can tap into its power as you use it. Trees are usually really good at this. When I'm picking what to use for my wand, I think of my tradition's elemental correspondences for the wand and what colors and trees and plants go with that element. I also think about how I'm going to use my wand. Is it for circle casting, spell work, or some other function? These considerations will lead me to selecting colors and other decorations that will be specific to my needs. I hope you have fun making your wand. We'd love to see how your travel items are shaping up. Head over to our website, emlc.net, and click on the podcast tab to leave us a picture. Or head over to facebook.com/evergladesmoon and leave a comment. Blessed be.
And that song was called The Four Doors to Elfland. Again, it's by Emerald Rose. This one's on their Archives of Ages to Come album. And again, you can learn more about them at emeraldrose.com.
Bubble, bubble, toil and trouble. Fire burn and cauldron bubble. And, oh, hello. I guess you are waiting to hear all about the Witch Class. Well, let me... Helga, what are you doing? Get away from that microphone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the EMLC podcast. My name is Kat Perron. I am a high priestess in the Welsh Celtic tradition and a member of a local coven here in Broward County. I will be teaching a beginning Wicca class series called Is Wicca for You? It is designed to help anyone who is interested in this spiritual path garner enough information to answer the question. I am blessed to have been invited to teach this class by the owners of the new and wonderful Love and Light Spiritual Emporium at 1419 East Commercial Boulevard, Suite B in Oakland Park, Florida, which is where the classes will be held. This is a great new shop, and I encourage you to pay them a visit. They have a little of everything, and they have been increasing their inventory since they opened. If there is something special you want, they can probably order it. Chris, Rose, or Tiffany will be glad to help you. The classes begin on Wednesday, April 4th from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m., again at the Love and Light Spiritual Emporium at 1419 East Commercial Boulevard, Suite B in Oakland Park, Florida, in case you didn't get it the first time. They continue every Wednesday with the last class on June 27th. So that's 13 classes that will give you the knowledge you need if you are curious about the Wiccan faith. Make no mistake, though, we will be having a lot of fun while covering several major subjects involving Wicca. There will be quite a bit of hands-on experience in almost every class. Here's a bit of information about each one. Is Wicca for You begins our series about this fascinating subject. We will talk about Wicca as a spiritual path as well as some of the beliefs that implies. Do Wiccans worship Satan or the devil? The short answer is no. Do Wiccans believe in karma, in certain deities? Is being a Wiccan the same as being a witch? We'll definitely find out. We will also be dealing briefly with the history of Wicca, both ancient and modern, and discussing the degree system of Wiccan training as required by many traditions. And just what is a tradition? We will discuss all of this as well as some of the best books to get additional answers. In It's Showtime, we will be learning a little more about the different traditions and answering different questions, such as, what is ritual? Why is ritual important? What are the various rites within a ritual? Do Wiccans perform... No, Ramses. No, we're not going to be talking about familiars. Sorry. Where was I? Oh, do Wiccans perform communion? And what is skyclad? Casting a circle, calling the quarters, invoking deity are just a few of the subjects that we will demonstrate and practice. In Big Wheel Keep On Turnin', we will learn about the Wheel of the Year and the Cycle of Life, two very important aspects of Wicca, as well as the difference between Esbats and important Wiccan festivals, also known as Sabbats. We will continue our class with more detailed information on the individual Sabbats. The class, called Toys for Tots, involves more information about ritual and the different tools we use because they appeal to our younger self, which we'll also explain. There are so many choices here, and you will get to see and touch some of the tools yourself as well as learn their purpose. The athame, chalice, pentacle, wand, and many more items will be discussed, and their part in ritual. In some cases, you can make your own ritual tools, which imbues them with special meaning and energy. And speaking of energy, playing with fire, elements, and energy is an important part of ritual and magic. We will discuss what we mean by energy, the three kinds of energy, and the different ways of using them, and we will perform some energy exercises. You will also learn about doing an energy cleansing and why that's important. In addition, we will learn about the elements of earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, and the difference between them and what we call elementals. Other disciplines use these elements in various ways, by the way, and we will delve into that as well. What element are you? Let's find out. Ask the Magic 8-Ball will be about divination and the various methods available. You will get a chance to see and touch various divination tools and learn how they are used. You may discover something that calls you to learn divination yourself. Do you like the wonderful artwork and symbolism of tarot? Do the runes and ancient alphabet seem more to your liking? How about the pendulum or the I Ching? There is a lot to choose from, including one method not so well known, but which sounds very provocative: throwing the bones. We will visit magic and spellcasting in the class called You Can Do Magic, a captivating field which inspires creativity. We will talk about what magic is, magical energy and how to use it, correspondences, spell ingredients, and how to craft a spell. Where can you perform magic? What are the ethics involved? And most importantly, why didn't my spell work? Touching the Divine is about Wiccan deities. What deities do Wiccans believe in? How do they worship them, so to speak? What do Wiccans generally believe about gods and goddesses? These and more questions will be answered as we discuss the various pantheons and their member deities, as well as concepts such as the duality of deity, deity as immanent, reverence for the earth and nature, and the sacredness of all life. Wicca is a wonderful spiritual path, but how do you follow it? In Connecting the Dots, we are all about integrating Wicca into your life. We will get into different concepts of spirituality, such as karma and reincarnation, and how to walk this path on a daily basis. We'll also talk about personal altars, the wheel of the year or the cycle of life, incorporating magic into your life, and regular practices to keep growing and living your beliefs. We will get crafty and creative and make something that you can use in your spiritual life, whether you're drawn to Wicca or some other spiritual faith. It will involve some of the information we've already discussed in the previous classes. You will get to use some of your own creativity and the knowledge you've acquired to create something you can take and use at home. Our final class will be a surprise, so I won't go into it here. You will, however, find out what it entails in an earlier class, so you don't want to miss any of them. Oh, and that's not all. In addition to the classes, we will enjoy an actual Beltane Sabbat ritual, participating in a lively and lovely celebration of this well-known festival, also known as May Day. Plus, we will perform a full moon ritual, honoring the goddess and doing some tool consecrations. So some seriously hands-on participation. Make sure you reserve a seat so we can explore this intriguing subject together. You can stop into the Love and Light Spiritual Emporium at 1419 East Commercial Boulevard, Suite B in Oakland Park to sign up and secure your place in the class. They are open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. and on Sundays from noon to 6 p.m. You can also reach them at 954-261-3878. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to sign up for Is Wicca for You?
This is Lady Bridget, and I'm here with Lord Riekin. And Lord Riekin is telling me that this is the time of year to put up bat houses and encourage bats. So I wanted him to tell us a little bit more about that.
And what's nearer and dearer to a witch's heart than a bat? We're in Florida, of course. Spring is really already sprung down here. We had a protracted warm spell here recently, and towards the end of it, the mosquitoes were coming out before some cool weather came and knocked them back again. But
yay for cool weather.
Yeah, they'll be here for good and all before long. And one of the best ways to knock down mosquito populations is to encourage local bats. Now in Florida we have 13 different species of bats, 8 of which are here in South Florida, either specifically or in general. The rest of them are about the rest of the state. And they're all very tiny. In fact,
they're all very what?
Tiny.
Oh.
Without exception, with one exception, all the bats in South Florida are so small that they could be mistaken for large moths.
Wow, that is tiny.
Yeah, and they literally, you could release them in a room and they could do quick circles in a room. There is one exception to that. Yeah, the big brown bat, that's the only one that can't literally do circles in a 10 by 10 room.
How big is the big brown bat?
Oh, he's still on the small side, like 6 inches.
So big is a relative term.
Yeah, big compared to some of the others.
Ah.
regardless, we have lots of little bats down here. Most species of bat, well, fruit bats get big. We don't have any fruit bats in here in South Florida, so I can't speak much to them.
But where other people live, they might have fruit bats.
They might have fruit bats and other bats. Should dismiss a couple of myths. Bats don't really carry a great deal of disease. What about rabies? Well, 0.5% of bats may carry rabies.
As opposed to a much higher percentage of rodents.
Rodents, raccoons, other things, cats and dogs, all carry more. The reason that bats tend to get a bad rap on this one is that rabies has two forms. It has the foaming at the mouth, staggering around, chasing and trying to bite things form of rabies. And other species, bats, when they get rabies, they simply look pathetic and lay on the ground. And you go, it's like you're not going to go up to a raccoon that's staggering around and foaming and frothing at the mouth, but you see a bat laying quietly on the ground, kind of struggling, you kind of go, "Aw," and you go up and pick it up.
Then it might bite you?
And then it might bite you. About the only reason that bats really enter into things at all is that people see them quietly struggling on the ground with no real idea what's wrong with them and pick them up, and they could get bit. Without that, we probably wouldn't have much of a record hospital-wise about bat bites or rabies or anything like that anyway.
So then go back to why you would want us to build a bat house.
We don't want you to build bat houses because a bat eats its weight in at least its weight in insects. A lactating female eats sometimes twice its weight in insects a night. That means...
That's a lot of bugs.
That equates to around 1,300 pounds of mosquitoes. Do you imagine how many mosquitoes it takes to make a pound? I can't even...
Wait. 1,300 pounds of mosquitoes
a year.
Oh, a year. I thought you were saying a night. I was like, what?
No. You will.
Okay, so 1,300 pounds of mosquitoes a year.
A season, I should say.
A season. Okay, so we're further clarifying it.
Yes, about a season. Bats can easily eat 1,300 pounds of mosquitoes a season. That's a lot of mosquitoes. They can cause a tremendous drop in the mosquito population.
Now, do they eat other insects as well?
Yes, everything. All moths. Of course, their moths make a much better meal for them. Bat will take a moth over a mosquito any day, with a few exceptions. There are a few really tiny bats that really could get beat up by a moth, so they only eat mosquitoes. But
now, the big question is: before I put a bat house in my backyard, do they eat bees?
No, that's not the problem. Well, they don't coexist, dear.
They don't eat bees?
Bees are flying around during the day, and bats are flying around at night.
Oh.
In fact, cool enough, there was a researcher who was climbing up into trees cavities to put his little camera on the end of a flexible wand down in to check for woodpecker babies, because woodpeckers make a cavity and they do their hatching in the bottom of the cavity.
Okay.
And the bat researcher said, well, when you're doing that, would you take just a second and aim your camera up, in the hole and see what you see? And sure enough, a lot of woodpeckers and bats coexist in the same cavity.
Oh.
But the woodpeckers are around doing their thing during the day, and the bats are doing their thing at night. They don't really bother each other.
They can just use the same
way with
entrance.
bees. The problem is that most people, when you say the word bat house, they think you're describing a chamber that has very much the same volume that a bee likes for a swarm.
Oh.
You see, they like something about 16 inches deep by 18 inches wide by 2 feet high with a bottom entrance.
That's a bee trap.
It's like I asked the researcher down at Zoo Miami, I said, what you call a bat house, I call a bait hive. And he explained to me that if you go and you look at the plans on the website, that the bat houses have interior baffles in them. Basically, in the inside of a well-designed bat house, to discourage birds and bees and lots of other things, basically they're sliced into 3/4-inch chambers. Rather like our beehives are if you're using foundation in your frames. Because think about it, these bats are the size of moths for the most part, okay? They don't need a huge open space. And a 3/4 inch wide baffled space inside there can hold several dozen bats.
Wow.
With no problem at all. You can have 200 bats inside a bat house of this nature, but be sure to either buy a commercially produced bat house or to carefully and correctly follow the instructions on building one. If you just build one and you leave out the interior baffles, you're a lot more likely in Florida to catch a swarm of bees than you are some bats.
Well, for me, I don't see the downside, but I can understand where a lot of people who don't want bees might see a downside.
True enough.
Now,
But-
you said about the website. This might be a good time for you to give the address of the website where they can find plans for a bat house.
Well, I didn't say website. I just said go on the web and look up plans.
Oh, they don't have one in that pamphlet?
Well, this pamphlet that I'm looking at right here is Bat Belfries Incorporated, www.floridabats.org.
And they sell bat houses
They
on
sell
there?
bat houses. But here's the thing. You don't have to worry about putting up a bat house in our backyard because we really don't have the right conditions. Bats need a house that's 18 to 20 feet up in the air. They need clear space around them. They need to be able to drop out of the bottom and have sufficient distance so that they can, gain speed and
swoop up
and take off. They like opening all the way around them. They like space all the way around them, I should say. They do not like interference. Bats do not like to have bat houses hung in trees because even if the day the bat house is put up, there may not be a branch interfering with them locating the bat house. At a later point, there could be branches interfering with it. So the ideal locations for bat houses would be like along a canal or a lake side.
or up on a telephone pole.
They do put bat houses on telephone poles, yes, but assuming that you don't have access to a telephone pole.
Right.
A lot of times what they do now is you anchor a good 4x4 post in the ground, and then you attach a pole to it, a heavy metal pole to it, with 3 bolts, the bottom bolt being a pivot, and the other 2 bolts being for securing it in place. That way you pull those 2 bolts out, you drop the box, do maintenance on it, pop it back up, and put it back in place. Bats like a nice wide open area around them. The edge of a pasture is fine. Like to have a source of fresh water for them. So if you can put one up next to a lake or a pond or a canal, that's really terrific.
Yeah, especially since lakes, ponds, and canals are all
Tend
places
to
where
breed
mosquitoes.
Da.
Yeah, so I see the correlation there.
Yeah, but be sure that you have them built with baffles on the inside so that bees don't find them attractive, so that birds don't find them attractive, so that raccoons and such
and squirrels
don't want to get up in them. And the reason for not just having a big wooden pole, it's very heavy and awkward and you can't bring it down for maintenance, but also if you are in a situation where you can use a wooden pole, i.e. if you can put one on a privately owned telephone pole, then you need to take like a 3-foot piece of sheet metal and wrap it around it, because raccoons particularly like to skinny up and have a tasty snack of bat.
And raccoons eat bats.
Yeah.
Yeah, raccoons will pretty much eat anything.
Yeah, but raccoons figure out there's bats up there, you'll pretty quickly have no bats. Now, also, they warn you that not every place, bats look for new nesting places, but not with the alacrity that bees do. You put up 5 bat houses, you may or may not have bats living in 3 of them by the end of the summer, but just keep them there, and sooner or later, hopefully, bats will move in. But we'll talk about orienting your bat house north and south because they want to maximize the heat. An interesting thing is that while bats are mammals, they do not regulate their temperature well if they're not flying. They have very, very high metabolisms. That's why they eat so many insects. They have very high metabolisms, but when they are at rest, they do not do a real good job of maintaining their body temperature, which is why they like to jam themselves together in tight clusters.
Keep warm.
You can see a huge cave and you'll see a cluster of bats the way you'd see a swarm of bees all tied together, and there's also like a little boiling mess because they're always moving to the inside and outside, kind of like emperor penguins.
Right.
They to stay warm. They don't regulate their body temperature well, and they can become badly chilled. Temperatures under 60 degrees.
So, one other question that occurs to me.
Mm-hmm.
If I have a bat house, am I going to have bat guano all over the ground around that bat house?
Bingo. That is one of the factors. People with small children and animals probably should not put one up in their backyard where it is accessible to children and animals.
Because there is such a thing as bat guano.
Oh, bat guano is a very big thing. It gets to be big piles. Look upon it as a resource, not as a problem. And that's the other way that bats have gotten a bad rap. Is there are certain diseases that people associated with the bat guano that really had nothing to do with the bat guano, but they've gotten the rap anyway, and it's a hard one to break. Bat guano is one of the highest quality fertilizers there is. If you're going to put a bat house up in like a public location, you can put a ring of shrubbery around it, a ring about 4 feet out from it. The bat guano is going to fall on the ground directly underneath it. Those are going to be the healthiest shrubs in the place because they're going to be fantastically well fertilized. And the other reason that you want to make sure that the area around the base of a bat pole is protected from children and animals is that if a bat is injured at night and makes it back to the bat house but then weakens and drops to the ground, well, one of those things could be rabies. And there could be other things wrong. I mean, it may be just physically injured, and if you pick the bat up, you could get bitten.
So you don't want your kids picking up injured bats.
Or dead
so
bats.
It sounds like you might want to put a little fence around it or put it in an area of your property that is
not accessible
not
to
accessible,
children and animals.
or just somewhere you don't really use that corner. But but if you didn't have shrubbery, could you pick up the bat guano and move it and use it in composting and use it in your garden?
Absolutely. Bat guano has been used for thousands of years as one of the highest quality and most expensive fertilizers out there.
Wow.
It's immediately usable, and you can top dress everything with it. Now, most bats have no odor. There is one species of bat here in Florida that has a gland in its neck, and it marks its territory. And that's how most people find out they have a bat in their house. That's also that largest bat I was talking about. And it's a little on the smelly side, and everything around is a little on the smelly side, apparently. So, you roll the dice, you could get that one, and it could be a little stinky, but most bats
all the more reason for having it away from the house.
Yes, indeed.
But that's interesting. And I don't think it's witches that like bats. I think it's vampires that like bats. I think you had that off.
No, I don't think I had that off at all. But we'll let the listeners tell us. Is it witches and bats, or is it just vampires and bats? I think it's witches and bats.
And if you do put up a bat house, send us a picture. We'd love to see it.
But please do follow the plans on the internet. There's a reason these things are made the way they're made. I always thought, until I took this seminar, that bat houses were just great big open boxes that bats swooped into. And I've even seen them with a little hole cut on the front. And it's like, turned out that's all wrong. They want the opening, they want the bottom to be open, and they build a series of baffles 3/4 of an inch apart.
So if they go on to Bat Belfries Incorporated at www.floridabats.org, they can find out what they're supposed to look like, and you can learn a lot more about putting up a potential bat house.
Yeah, and you can learn about the different species of bats that we have in the different parts of the state. And whatever state you're in, because I know not all of our listeners are here.
That's true.
I know.
But you know what? No matter what state you're in, bats still eat mosquitoes, and that is a good thing.
Yeah, it certainly is.
All right. Thank you very much, Lord Riekin.
You're welcome.
Hi, everyone. Before we begin our last segment of this episode, we'd like to thank you for listening. Putting a podcast together is a time-consuming labor of love, but knowing that someone is listening to our hard work and hopefully gaining something from it makes it worthwhile. Would you let us know you like the podcast by going to our website at emlc.net, click on the podcast tab, and write a comment. Tell us what you like and what you'd like to hear more of on our podcast. And even better, why not leave us a rating on iTunes? Ratings help us become more visible to more people. It's not about ego, it's all about service. Thank you, and blessed be.
And the last song that's going to take us out is a very upbeat song by Emerald Rose, and it's called Freya Shakti, and it is on their album Archives of Ages to Come. That's a really great album. You're going to love it. You can buy it at emeraldrose.com.
Freya Shakti Athoriana Raya Mata Morrigan. Freya Shakti Athoriana Raya Mata Morrigan. I raising up the goddess, oh, fill my soul. I raising up the spirit, oh, make me whole. Freya Shakti Athoriana Raya Mata Morrigan. Freya Shakti Athoriana Raya Mata Morrigan. I raising up the goddess, oh, fill my soul. I raising up the spirit, oh, make me whole. She is a woman crowned with a crescent. She is the mother of all that lives. She is the earth that is spinning in starlight. She is the goddess of all that is. I raising up the goddess, oh, fill my soul. I raising up the spirit, oh, make me whole. I know a woman stirring a cauldron. She is the source of the heart's deep core. I love a maiden dancing in moonlight. She is the key to the ancient lore. I raising up the goddess, oh, fill my soul. I raising up the spirit, oh, make me whole. Freya Shakti Athoriana Raya Mata Morrigan. Freya Shakti Athoriana Raya Mata Morrigan. I raising up the goddess, oh, fill my soul. I raising up the spirit, oh, make me whole. Freya Shakti Athoriana Raya Mata Morrigan. Freya Shakti Athoriana Raya Mata Morrigan. Freya Shakti raising up the goddess, oh, fill my soul. I raising up the spirit, oh, make me whole. Freya Shakti Athoriana Raya Mata Morrigan. Freya Shakti Athoriana Raya Mata Morrigan. I raising up the goddess,